All right, welcome to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. Today's going to be a bit of a potpourri. I think we've got a number of topics and we're kind of just all over the place.
Yeah, but first, I got an awesome gift from one of my clients.
Ugh.
I wanted to show off here. So these are the best kind of gifts. Oh, personalized ones. A nice little decanter
Ooh.
with personalized engravings on it for my setup upstairs. As I'm making that pretty with the still that we don't use, uh,
Ew.
and but also set of glasses as well with all the same stuff. So
Oh, nice.
it's going to be could be a nice little setup upstairs once we get everything done. Theoretically, we have a pool table. We just have to get it, and it's one of those old school slate ones that we're going to actually hire a professional company to bring it and level it and all of that. So it's going to be like a sports bar upstairs. And then once I get all that set up and I see what the spacing is going to be like, I'll actually think I'm going to put a sink on the other side. You know how the bathroom butts up? Put
Yeah.
a sink on the other side too, so
Mm.
there's a little there's water for the bar and stuff. So
Speaking of sports bar, what am I supposed to think about Sunday's game?
well, I think you ever see those kind of the little 5-year-old playing chess and the grandmaster is having a tough time
Hmm.
because it's just random things going. I think the Texans are at the point where they were just like, yeah, okay, well, because we kept switching our quarterback, we kept
Yeah.
doing these random trick
You're
plays, we
not
kept.
supposed to do that. That's one of the no-nos. There's an old saying in the NFL, if you have two quarterbacks, you have one too many. Or
Mm-hmm,
no, it's if you have two quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks.
mm-hmm.
Because the idea that you could switch it out, it, Sean Payton was able to do it in New Orleans, but that was because what's his face was really more of a gadget play guy.
Taysom Hill.
Yeah, Hill would just go in there to do gadget play kind of things, but
These were like actual full drives
yeah,
and
he would
full
go in there
sets.
for
Yeah.
full drives, full series, and then swap them out, and not you know uh not like the Rams did it. They swapped out their quarterback after the first drive, but that was because he was doing bad and he had a neck injury, and so they put in Mayfield even though he had been there for less than 48 hours.
There's a picture of him floating around where I guess he looks just super hungover and tired. And they made a meme with it, which was Mayfield studying the playbook for the last 48 hours before the game.
Yeah, and it was the best game he's had in like 2 years. Um, but the Texans played the Eagles close for 3 quarters, and that
Mhm.
game looked like it wasn't supposed to look. But then the Cowgirls got played them close for 57 minutes.
Well,
So,
and this is actually why I'm hopeful for the Texans, even though I know I got my bias for it being my team. But when I look at we've done the numbers on football teams and how
mhm.
salary caps work and everything, and it's no surprise that we lose every game in the third and a half to fourth quarter because we have zero depth. You can't have depth. We're playing with 2/3 of a salary cap,
Yeah.
and people still can't get it through their head that you're trying to fit a team under a certain number. It's not the boss doesn't want to pay you more. In fact, you look at the way baseball is, and when owners have free reign on these things, they tend to spend more than the salary cap, even though they have to pay more with that luxury tax
Yeah.
because you make more money when you win.
Hmm.
That's why the Yankees buy a team every year.
Unless you're the Cowboys, and it's he
But
Jerry
again,
Jones
they got
has
to.
managed to raise that brand value to ridiculous levels, even though they've won one playoff game since the 90s or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's been 2 decades of mediocrity to bad.
Well, part of it is the age demographic.
Hmm.
We were at the height of starting to really love football at the time the Cowboys were great.
Yeah.
Go back 10 years and the Steelers still had that following because
Yeah.
10 years before that they were the team. And go fast forward 10 years, the Patriots are going to be that way with our age
Yeah.
demographic. So
Well,
it's
I'm mildly optimistic. If I'm looking for the bright side, Yeah, they sucked for 57 minutes, but when it was on the line and you needed that winning drive, I can't remember the last time I saw the Cowboys need a winning drive and actually make it.
Now,
They're either strongly ahead or they've lost.
yeah, well, here's the thing: they were playing the Texans in the fourth quarter,
Mhm.
so it was kind of, yes, it was good for them, but also it's kind of what
Yeah.
we do. We kind of screw the poop. Well, I mean, again, we have no depth. Our guys are tired.
Yep.
There's no the subbing in and out is subpar, and if we're winning early, that means we weren't doing it. And eventually, you break down, and you have to do that kind of stuff, especially if a injury or two pops up in the middle of the game. Now, here's the second part of the optimistic, though. Our GM's doing a good job of making sure we don't have that hole next year. We got a shit ton of picks. The off season, we get the free agency in the off season, and all of a sudden we're going to have 80 million more dollars, or
Hmm.
at least a good percentage of that, 60, 70 million more dollars.
Yeah,
So
when we were looking at dead cap, I don't remember if the Texans were the worst, but they were certainly in the top three.
they were the worst.
Oh. They
Yeah.
were the worst.
Now there
Yeah.
were others that were pretty damn close, but they're also bad teams. And it's just no surprise. The bad teams start in the front office, and we're still recovering from the Bill O'Brien years.
Hmm.
And I think now Tommy Boy's taking his hands off the team and giving it to the general manager and stuff. But at the same time, he was the one that hired Bob, and it wasn't a mistake as a coach. It was a mistake as a GM. They gave him too much power.
Hmm.
They Fauci'd him. They just put everything on him and let him do his thing, and he was too arrogant to stop. And I think he gave us a big fu on the way out too, because those big giant contracts at the last minute to mediocre players were no accident. Zach Cunningham, I liked him as a linebacker, not for $50 million though.
All right. What are we going to move on to? Speaking of Fauci, do we want to talk about that?
Yeah, is that where you want to start?
No, what was it? I was uh I was looking at other stuff with the Twitter files, but I'd heard someone say that Musk was tweeting about Fauci. Was there stuff in the
No,
latest Twitter files drop about him?
no. This is separate. He made
Okay.
his pronouns on Twitter prosecute Fauci.
Right. And I was
Yeah,
wondering if that was in reference to something from the Twitter files
it
or
might be something
something
that's still
else.
coming out, but there's nothing, not that I've seen official yet, because there's
Okay.
only been the three, right? I didn't miss a fourth one, fourth dump.
I think so. I think it was just the three.
No, the big news coming out of those was all the FBI stuff. But let's start with a fun COVID thing, because I was listening to one of the guys I like on most things with it is Vinay Prasad, and he was talking about going in the sauna at the gym, and a gentleman came in with three masks on into the sauna, and he talking about ridiculous things. And this was one he actually witnessed because he was in the sauna. And my brain immediately sparked. I was like, well, we talk about the difference between viruses and bacteria,
Uh-huh.
and viruses spread faster, and they can end up being more deadly and harmful in that way, but they're also more delicate. And I was like, well, we kill most bacteria at about 160 degrees, 150, 160 degrees. Wonder what COVID lives up to. So I went searching, and the CDC uh, says 149 degrees. And then I looked for the research behind it, and I found it in the publications. So it dies at 149 degrees, 65 degrees Celsius. So I was like, well, saunas are pretty hot, anywhere from 150 to 195, and they tend to cap them out in those public gyms. So you don't even need a mask in the
Yeah.
sauna, because the virus freaking dies in the air before you can breathe it in.
Yeah. That is, yeah, I mean, have we well, this is related to
Disclaimers: we're not giving you medical advice. If you feel like you need a mask in a sauna, that's your choice.
but we are saying pay the frick attention to what is being said. Um and to me this ties together with the Twitter files that have been released. You know, everyone was freaking out at the beginning. Remember, we were told you need to like get your groceries delivered and wipe down the bags, and then not that long after the initial panic, uh, the CDC itself came out and said that they had not found a single documented case of spread except with close personal contact.
Well, early on when I had the disease, they were still talking about fomites. So we took the precaution. And when I put everything on the front porch for the family to get to stay at her sister's, I sprayed it down with some bleach water.
Hmm.
And no big deal, no harm, no foul. But it's better to be overly cautious when you don't know. But as soon as it was found out, I was like, okay, I'm just going to stop doing it.
Yeah,
And
well,
yeah,
right, because the key word about SARS-CoV-2 was a novel virus. We didn't know because we didn't know its origins. There was a lot of misinformation and disinformation at the beginning coming from China. And you know, the WHO pretending that Taiwan doesn't exist. So there was a lot of mis and disinformation and a lot of speculation. So yes, to that point, at the very beginning, better safe than sorry because it is novel. We don't know enough about this virus to know, is this going to act like CoV-1? Is this
yeah.
going to act like the first SARS, which is where the name comes from? Because we know a lot about that. We lived through that. And then eventually we did discover, okay, that in 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 transmission, this acts like other coronaviruses. It's what it does when it gets in you that's weird,
Mm-hmm.
because that spike and that weird names I can't remember site, they look,
Cleavage site.
the
Yeah.
cleavage site,
Yeah.
they look weird. There's something strange about them, and so that is why it does weird things when it gets in your body. We know that now. People are still acting like lunatics. People are still acting at this point. It becomes a moral scare. It becomes, you're being a hypochondriac. We know these things, but people aren't paying attention to them. The reaction from the mainstream corporate media about yawn ho hum, there's nothing to see here. We knew all this. No, we suspected all this, and people on the right and people who were kind of not on the right, but the free speech absolutist kind of people, the Tim Pool types, who I wouldn't call a conservative, but he's kind of on our side just because he can't stand this big tech censorship. They were saying this is happening. They were saying that this was, remember the word we heard for 4 years under Trump, collusion. Well, now
Remember,
we
they
know.
can't recall. So
Yes.
everything you're saying is a moot point because they don't
I don't
remember.
recall.
Well, that was 194 times. Let's look at I don't remember. Another 19 times. So add those two together. Uh, but yeah,
This the Twitter file should be the biggest political scandal in US history ever. And there should be grand juries being called up because these government entities were grossly violating people's civil rights and shredding the Constitution. And I contend that these Twitter employees who are in these Slack messages and are in these emails that are being released, by going along with this, by either caving to the pressure or colluding because it's what they wanted to do anyway, which is the big thing about a lot of these messages, is you see in a lot of them, they're trying to find post hoc justifications. They're saying this doesn't directly uh, violate one of our policies, so how can we ban this person? How can we justify? They're trying to justify things they want to do anyway, and they're doing it at the behest of government entities, which makes them a public-private partnership. It makes them an arm of, acting as an arm of the government.
I think we should kind of zoom out for just a second to catch people up who might be getting their information here. But but always check our work if you come here first. Uh, the last episode we did on this, it was after the first dump,
Hmm.
and it was still kind of, it was more like the Biden campaign team
Hmm.
was asking for the suppression, and that's where the First Amendment kind of argument was hitting itself against the wall because, well, they weren't in government at the time and blah blah blah. Well, it turns out that the person giving the files out was an FBI director, former FBI director,
Hmm.
though I'm with the people that say you never retire if you're that high up in those things because you know too much. But he was leaking out the least harmful stuff. And then when the rat was found in the room and removed, oh, it turns out that the FBI was meeting with the Twitter heads weekly to decide what was going to be able to be left up, what was going to be put down. And yeah, so now we officially do have the government involved. And now the counter argument is, well, Trump was in office when that was happening. It's like, if you don't realize how much the FBI hated him, uh,
Hmm.
in fact, this was one of my arguments, and it's actually to the people that were saying that Trump was going to destroy the world if he was president for another 4 years. One of my big arguments was no, he's not, because everybody's against him. He can't be a dictator because everybody's against him. There's balance there. And once the other person ended up in office, nobody was against him. We lost that balance, and all the shit hits the fan. You looking for something specific?
Yeah, I was looking for something for specific, but I lost my train of thought anyway.
Well, but I still would, I'll piggyback that with, I don't like the First Amendment argument right now because, yeah, we can sit there and banter about it all day long, is what constitutes the government and what constitutes the Twitter decisions on their own and private industry and what they're allowed to do. So it might be a First Amendment violation, but it for sure is collusion, and it for sure is tampering with an election. And personally, because we can put a monetary amount to exposure on social media, it was a campaign donation.
Hmm.
That should count as a campaign donation. If I
Hmm.
loan you my facility to do something for your campaign, and that's a campaign donation. This is another version of a campaign donation. We know just from playing with social media what the algorithm can do for you financially.
If a company or a lobby group or whatever flies you around on their private jet as a public official, you have to declare that. You have to uh, uh, claim that. I can't remember the technical terms that they use, but yeah, there are in-kind donations, and you have to consider that. Um, when it comes to those kinds of things, and this definitely is. And again, you can see by their language, they're looking for ways to justify this thing that they want to do. So it's collusion's the right word here because they aren't being coerced. They're being asked to do this thing by uh campaign officials and government officials, and they're looking for ways to make it happen.
You find what you needed.
No, annoyed with this issue anyway.
Yeah.
It just me ranting here isn't going to make it as big as it should be, but this is one of the things that so the when the Whitewater story initially broke, it was a partisan story initially. Um, what really broke Nixon was the release of the tapes, the recordings that he had made inside the Oval Office. And that's what broke him, because there were things on those tapes. And the big one that I've mentioned before is he floated the idea. He didn't actually do it, but he floated the idea of using the IRS to go after his political enemies. And that's when a lot of Republicans broke and started pressuring him to resign, or we're going to join the Democrats in impeaching you.
Mm-hmm. Well, and
Be-
that's one of the big worries going forward, because those of us that own small businesses and are in the middle class who get affected by these things more than anybody else. Well, why did they hire so many IRS agents? What's going on? Who are they going after? They didn't hire 65,000 to go after the few billionaires.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
they said it was to get people who are, you know, uh who are abusing the system or aren't paying their fair share. Okay, well, you just look at the numbers. The overwhelming majority of audits happen to middle class people,
Mm-hmm.
and the overwhelming majority of those happened uh happen to, as you say, small business owners, because you're filing your taxes yourself, because your business income and your personal income are the same thing, which makes your taxes annoyingly complicated, which means it's easier to find a violation.
Mm-hmm. And everybody out there is going, just hire a CPA. It's like,
Doesn't
yeah,
protect you.
it doesn't protect you, and it's freaking expensive.
The only protection it gives you is that it makes it slightly less likely that they'll audit you in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
But if they do audit you, you're still screwed, because this is in blatant violation of the Constitution, both its letter and its spirit. An IRS audit, you are guilty until proven innocent. You have to prove to them that you followed all the regulations and you did everything right. No, no. It should be take me to court and prove your case, government.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not how it works. They can deprive you of life, liberty, and property without any due process.
And it doesn't work the other way around, not as efficiently, that's for sure. The client that gave me the decanter, he just finally got his check from the IRS for a mistake they made 10 years ago.
Shrug. Oh
Yeah.
well,
Yep.
stuff happens.
Stuff happens. But they can come after me with a gun if I mess up on my TurboTax this year.
Yeah, people are, or I think I mentioned this when we were talking about uh the was it the budget, or was it the Inflation Reduction Act that they put this in with the 60 something new IRS employees that they were hiring, and there were uh people, especially on the right, got all in a, a fit because there were employment pages for uh for people to apply to the IRS, and one of them was uh being able to use a firearm and
Being willing to use it.
being willing to use it.
Yeah.
And I just shrugged and said, guys, some of us were talking about this over a decade ago when we found out, why does the Department of Education have SWAT teams? There was a a veteran who was killed because a SWAT team raided his house, and I believe it turned out to be an accident. If I'm this again, this is over 10 years ago. At the behest of, or from the Department of Education, over student loans, over unpaid student loans.
Sorry, I was
I
looking
think
for the
I think
the
we've jumped the shark here, people. And this is something, this is one of the few uh criticisms I've had of DeSantis, but we'll see if it comes up again, because he tends to do what he says he's going to do. When the FBI raided Mar-a-Lago, and notice how fast that went away after the midterm election. Curious, isn't it? Very quietly, it just kind of fizzled away, and they said, "Oh yeah, we couldn't find anything."
mm-hmm.
Just like right after the election, the court said, "No, you don't have the authority to just wave your hand and forgive all this student loan debt. One of the things DeSantis said is they were going to use state and local law enforcement to block federal law enforcement. And I believe in a press conference he said, if federal law enforcement comes after you and you believe that it is illegitimate, call your local sheriff. Well, we'll see if they actually do anything about that. But that needs to be across the board. That needs to be every state, because again, why the hell does the Department of Education have SWAT teams? That is a grotesque abuse of power. That's not what that department is supposed to be for.
Well, and they're obviously not helping when it comes to what you would think a SWAT team would be used for in a shooter situation or something along those lines. There is that.
Yeah. Yeah. Where an off-duty guy whose wife is dying in there has to go in and do something about it.
Just listen to semi-interview, kind of a forum, and one of the guys there was a parent of the Parkland, one of the girls that died in the Parkland shooting incident.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes around the country training like teachers in action reaction stuff. And in Florida where he lived, they apparently have a program where they're basically teaching and arming teachers. And so that's what he does now. But it's sad. It's really sad that we can't depend on our law enforcement. We have to. He was talking about Parkland, and apparently the coaches were trying to go in to save the kids, and the law enforcement wouldn't let them, just like in Uvalde.
Mm-hmm.
And
I hadn't heard that. I'd heard that one of the, and I think the guy got reelected. It was a sheriff or deputy. No, I think he was the school officer. So he was part of one of the local, either the police department or the sheriff's department assigned to the school.
mm-hmm.
And he was hiding during it.
Yes,
And
they were talking about he was found guilty of some sort of negligence charge, or it was tied to manslaughter, kind of. It was equivalent to manslaughter.
And we talked about this right after the Uvalde shooting, and I think I brought up some sources. There have been a number of cases where people have tried to sue civilly because there were no criminal charges, have tried to sue civilly because uh, uh, law enforcement or government entities failed to protect someone. And the courts have said routinely that you have no expectation. They are not obligated to protect you, to save you. Well, okay.
Wait, what? In the motto protect and serve?
Yeah, that's the motto, but technically, according to the court, they are not obligated to do so, and you cannot sue them for failing to do so. Okay. One, what about gross neglect? I mean, we have that in private civil suits. If someone doesn't have to mean to harm you, but if they are grossly negligent, then they can be sued. How is this not gross negligence? But more importantly, so we have no recourse to take them to court if they fail to execute their duties and protect people when they're supposed to. This is their job. This is what we pay them for. Yeah, that they take an oath of office. How is that not a violation? They are solemnly swearing. Uh, how is that not the same as violating an oath you take in court, a perjury?
Mhm.
It's the same idea. But the bigger issue is, so we can't sue them for failing to protect, but they can physically restrain us from doing it ourselves. At what point do you say the government has jumped the shark and is out of control and are no longer our employees, but our masters?
Mm-hmm. It's there's a slight subjectivity there, because if they were doing a maneuver, then somebody could get in the way.
Mhm.
But that hasn't been the case.
Mhm.
That they were doing nothing. Uh, then you bring up then someone would bring up the argument, well, you could be putting more people in harm's way. Well, how can you get more harm's way than a person holding people in a classroom with a gun, shooting them one at a time? What, he's going to shoot a
While
couple faster while you go in there? Yeah, probably.
yeah, while people in there are bleeding out, literally
Mhm.
texting and calling their loved ones saying, "Help, I'm dying." Yeah, well, now I'm angry.
Yeah, I was about to say this one escalated quickly.
I know, and I'm not drinking right now. It's makes me angry. Is that
So
our
now
segue into
you
fitness?
now you know how I felt through October.
Is
But
that our segue into nutrition and fitness?
I want to say one more thing. This is because I'm going to tie it back to the Twitter files.
Mm,
This is what's so important about these things, not just that there's collusion and it affected our elections, it affected our relationships with each other. I mean, how much violence was instigated because the echo chambers that were forming online because of these policies,
yeah.
and then the alienation some people were feeling because they knew they were being shadow banned, they knew they were being. This is my problem with the thing about Trump being I hate that they're making me defend this man, but
Yeah.
this whole, oh, he's just paranoid, he's all these things. He may have been wrong about what it was, but he knew something was up and he knew it was against him. He, you can feel these things. You know when people are plotting against you. It's just like all these things that happen. Yes, randomness happens, but then there would be a randomness of how it affects you. It wouldn't all keep snowballing in the same direction. And he's not a dumb guy. He's a bombastic narcissist, but he's not dumb. And so there was something going on. He was wrong about what it was. So, but the point I'm tying back what we just talked about was this thing was going on, and this is where the efforts of our law enforcement were going. Our Department of Justice, our FBI, when we still have these other problems that, that's what they're for. The bring back the Parkland thing. He talked about all the tips the FBI had on the shooter. The guy's aunt called the FBI and said, my nephew is going to shoot up a school. And they did nothing. They did absolutely nothing. Same thing with Uvalde. People were given tips all the time, and law enforcement did nothing about this kid.
Freaking Nasser, what was the number? It was, I believe it was 70 something girls were molested after the FBI was informed, after they interviewed people and then did nothing about. Nasser was the guy's name, right? The
Yeah, the
seasonable name. And
doctor, or
yeah, he was the doctor, you know, and he would do physicals and he would molest these girls. And I believe the number was over 300 victims. I think one lower level guy got fired over that.
and then add to that when you want to start racking up the harms, people like Dr. Bottichiaro were shadow banned. How many people died because we never had that debate?
Mhm.
How many people's jobs and livelihoods were destroyed because we never had that debate? How many
Well,
people,
yeah.
how would the voting have gone in the 2020 election had we done targeted protection instead of complete lockdowns?
Well, and this is where, to your point, this is where I get infuriated with Trump is still to this day. And I think if you look at polls, he's in numerous GOP polls looking at the primary, he's losing to DeSantis right now. Um, and I think a big part of that, well, two things. One, he continues to tout Operation Warp Speed and the vaccines as a great accomplishment of his administration. But two, every time he talks about election fortification, it's all about him. They stole the election from me. Dude, it's not about you.
Mm-hmm.
This is about we the voter. Can we trust our employees that we are putting in positions of authority?
Well, now
Are we?
you've got the Senate is trying to make it a Senate approval process for CDC directors, FDA officials, and things like along those lines.
Mhm.
And of course, Walensky's up in arms about it, how it's going to slow the process down, and da, 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 da. But yeah, we at least we would have some representation in the choice.
We have, yeah, yeah. That was something I was thinking. And I don't think I brought up when you first brought up Fauci's deposition is, hey, keep in mind, guys, this is literally the highest paid employee of the government. He has been in government for 40 years, being the whiz kid, wonderkin, know it all when it comes to this stuff, even though he's gotten everything wrong. Go back and look at when we talked about him and his reaction to the HIV crisis in the 80s. And he can't recall. He doesn't remember. He doesn't know what's going on. Either he is the world's biggest moron or he is the world's biggest sociopath because he absolutely fears no accountability for his actions. And he is the highest paid employee of us.
Well, I'm not going to go into all the details because people can watch that episode. But the things he can't recall is the problem. I don't
Yeah.
recall everything I ever signed, but I recall the important things. I
Mm-hmm.
recall buying my truck. I recall signing the mortgage note. I recall those things. The things he didn't recall were the exceptions that he had to approve,
Mm-hmm.
not the day-to-day things that come across his desk.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't remember what it was in relation to, but all right, you even if you don't recall the general or the specifics, you could at least talk about the general stuff. So he was asked a question pertaining to, you know, uh, well, why did you pick these people to do this thing? I think it may have been about going to Wuhan, the team that went to Wuhan to investigate the lab and try and figure out the origins of the virus. And and he basically said, "Oh, I just picked some names." Wait, that is your general way of doing things is you just picked some names. You didn't have a process for picking the best people for the job. You just picked some names randomly. That's how you do things as the highest paid employee of We the People?
Well, that and all we need do is go to his emails that have been released with FOIA request.
That's the
And
most mind-boggling thing about that deposition is time after time. I believe there's a point where he says, "Let me guess, you're going to show me a document where I did just that." Because he was asked a question, he said, "Oh, I don't know, I don't remember." And then time after time and after time again, they said, "Well, here's an email. Here's a freaking interview that you did uh for media where you said this." And, I don't remember.
yeah, well, and it's just the way the emails played out. Because the first time they got released, they were actually heavily redacted,
Mm,
and we just got the unredacted versions. Uh, and not only are they saying to the public something different than they were saying in private, but they were even keeping things from each other because some things would be him and everybody in the whole sphere of it, and then some things would be just him and Francis Collins talking about something where it's like, oh well, it might be from a lab, it might be this and this and yeah, we have our suspicions about that. And then the next email would be to everybody and it'd say nothing to see here on the same day at the same time in real time. Just I don't know. This is probably more to the Elon Musk thing. I don't think we need secret Twitter files for him to have made that statement because he's
yeah.
seeing the same things we are.
We have had enough. What I think that FOIA dump of emails, that initial FOIA dump of emails was like 18 months ago. We've had enough for someone to prosecute him for 18 months and nothing is happening. He continues to be lauded by the administration and by the media and by the people who have turned this into a partisan issue. Tying it back to all of our other ranting here, one of the things I had a thought and then I went off on a rant. Looking at the bigger picture, not making the fortification just about one guy, not making the problems with policing just about one event. This is a rant I've had with a mutual friend of ours for a long time now when he posts all this stuff about how the police are racist and policing is racist and everything's about race. Dude, for the sake of argument, let's assume everything you're saying about race is true. Is that the only problem we have with law enforcement? Is that even the root problem that we have with law enforcement? Or do our problems go deeper? You talk about systemic racism. Well, could it be that, for the sake of argument, that systemic racism is part of a bigger systemic problem? Because when you make everything, every issue, every problem, every failing of law enforcement about race, you ignore the bigger, deeper problem. You're looking at, I'm coughing up blood. I need a lozenge. You have lung cancer. Let's deal with that. It we have a deeper problem that goes to the the philosophy and the attitude and the outlook of how our government officials act. And it is especially egregious when it comes to law enforcement because they literally have the power of life and death in their hands.
Well, and
So,
just like we're finding out with everything else too, when you want to get to the bottom of it, when something bad does happen, they also have the power to not share the information with us if they want to.
hey, anyone remember that Vegas shooting? Boy, that got memory hold.
Yeah. And even if you do FOIA requests and stuff, which is our only weapon, they take forever.
Yeah.
You have to make the case. You have to make the case to get the information. And then you get stuff like this. You get a document that is blanked out.
Is that
That's a
still
redacted
loading?
document.
Is that hasn't loaded yet? Oh no, that's the document. Okay.
That's the document. I request this document. They say, okay. They give you it with everything blanked out. And then you have to make a next request with information regarding this. And then you get something that's blanked out except everything but a couple words that were specific to the thing you requested.
Or if you're in an area that is where the courts are particularly partisan, all right, the FOIA request goes through and the agency just ignores it. If you don't have a court that is willing to enforce it, they just ignore it and ignore it and ignore it. All right. Well, I need to refill my coffee and we need to get off this rant and get on to something else. So let's pause
Something
for a
more
second.
fun.
All right. So kind of the takeaway, the point is the big picture. Don't get hung up. We have received wisdom. That's kind of what our Wednesdays are all about, is we have received wisdom. Don't get hung up on, where it came from and just dismiss it. Consider why this has been around forever. We have a saying, don't miss the forest for the trees, or can't see the trees for the forest. We have these things. Use them. I mean, for crying out loud, can you imagine if we had to refigure out cooking? How many people would die just trying to figure out what kind of mushrooms to eat? Or have a really good time just trying to figure out what kind of mushrooms to eat. So, and that's kind of what we try to do when we talk fitness too, is don't get hung up on the details. That's where the personal training comes from. If you want a personalized thing, then you need a personal trainer who can personalize it. Otherwise, you need to first figure out the big picture, figure out the main ideas, and then figure out, okay, what are the details? How does this apply specifically to what I'm trying to do. So nutrition is that way, and I try and talk about this with people when they ask for nutrition advice. And one of the first things I say is it's not easy, or else everyone would do it, but weight loss is simple. It's just a balance. It's just a formula. It's calories in, calories out. The end. Okay. Now, with the details can get really complicated, and how you apply that to your specific situation can get more complicated. But the big picture is calories in, calories out.
Yeah, nutrition science kind of sucks. But it's the same with exercise science, realistically. But we've talked about the limitations there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, again, give me a good randomized controlled study comparing potatoes to noodles. You know if you're eating potatoes, and you know if you're eating noodles. But let me plug our sponsor real quick, Real Fitness and Performance, YouTube channel coming out at the end of this year. It is currently in filming, and one of the purposes of the YouTube channel is actually to teach you how to find a good trainer. And so there's several parts. It's to give you something to do if you don't know what to do. There's teach you how to become your own trainer, teach trainers how to be better trainers. So there's part 3, but part 4 is become the informed consumer. Because I think we should do now that we're on the social channel, I'll say this part out loud, we should do it with all our experts, all our professionals. You go to the doctor, quiz them. Make sure they know what they're talking about. And here's the thing, when they give you advice, say why. Make them sit and talk to you for more than 5 minutes. You need to do this and this and this and take this medicine. Why? And if they can't answer that in a way that you understand, then get a new doctor.
Yeah.
Same with a trainer. Here, pick up these 400 pounds. Why? Because you're ready for it for these reasons. It's going to be good for you for these reasons. And we're trying to accomplish this. Good trainer. Because I said so. Don't be a wimp. Bad trainer. You know, obviously I gave extreme examples, but we'll get more nuanced into that. You don't make a whole YouTube channel on a 5-second blip, but that's our sponsor, because it's been paying everything from here on out anyways, but or going retroactively. But when it's official, we'll maybe make an official sponsor thing like they do on all of those things. See, I'm not making money on this. I'm just funding my own, making no money on this. But back to what you were saying. Say what you said again. Nutrition. Oh, nutrition science sucks is where I was going. Dang it, I shouldn't have put that in there, because you start ranting again and I might have my thought back.
Well, so again, not easy, or everyone would do it, but it is weight loss is simple. Calories in, calories out. Okay, now how do I apply that? What do I do? So the first thing I mentioned, that I'm cranky and I want to drink because the stuff we were ranting about makes me mad. It is a simple thing to cut. It's not an easy thing to cut, but it's a simple thing to cut, because we know protein, carbs, fat, alcohol. There's a formula there of 1 gram equals X calories, right? And alcohol is 7. That's more than protein and carbs, and almost as much as fat, which is 9. So
and even more difficult, is so the pro alcohol crowd will come in. You can't convert alcohol into fat. This is true, but it is a very readily accessible source of energy that your body loves to use, even though it's not very optimal. It's like throwing gasoline in when you're trying to light a wood fire, right? It's going to be this fast burst that your body says, yeah, but it's not the best thing for cooking your food. We're not going to cook our food over gas. But propane, yes. I'm talking like car gas out of your car.
propane and propane accessories.
But so you got all this energy and you eat. Well, it's just gonna your body's got the energy it needs, so it's just gonna take all the stuff you eat and break it down and put it back together into fat and store it.
It also Now you're the witch. I don't understand the witchcraft, but if you look at the chain, if you look at the goofy drawing of what a uh an alcohol looks like, it breaks down into and turns into sugar pretty easily, right?
It's acetate, and but also sugars. Yeah.
So uh it can turn into sugar easily, which is why it's such a good source of quick energy. Um, but calories in, calories out, if you don't need to burn that energy, it's going to be stored. So yes,
Oh.
directly. So the idea that, well, it doesn't turn into fat. Okay, well, this is kind of the fallacy of the low fat, no fat craze of the 90s.
Mhm.
That,
No, but it's different than that. But again, it's more of an indirect thing.
but
I
it's the
mean,
same kind of fallacy.
yeah.
It's, well, hold on. You're you don't store fat from fat. Your body breaks it that down, then decides I don't
Mhm.
need this, and then turns it into storable fat. The fat you eat isn't the fat on your gut. So it has to be broken down and converted into those blocks of lipids that your body can pull out when it needs it.
So ethanol is the alcohol, acetaldehyde, and then it turns into acetate, which is different than turning it into a sugar, but it still breaks down pretty well into energy really quickly. It also binds to things in your brain that block your reward centers, and there's a reason it numbs your brain, but there's also the other parts of it numbing your brain.
Mhm.
And when you block your reward centers, well, guess what? If you ate a cookie, you just didn't get the reward of the cookie, so you eat another cookie. How many times do people overeat because they were out binge drinking? And it's Whataburger taquitos usually on the way home. Uh, and then you eat till you're completely bloated stuffed because you never got satisfied with it until you just couldn't eat anymore. But so the alcohol indirectly affects your metabolism in so many
Mhm.
ways. But yeah, it's a simple cutout for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Difficult,
Not
difficult.
easy. I have seen a lot of sad faces when girls have asked me, What do I need to do?" Because you get we're gonna talk about this more New Year's because you get a big jump in business, especially at a box gym. I don't know about, you know, private, but especially at a box gym, you get a big jump in business around New Year's, and a big part of that is I need to look good in a bikini for spring break. Okay, stop drinking. That's the simplest thing to do diet wise for most of these most of these girls who are asking me to stop drinking. Oh,
I do a full diet analysis first and see if I can find other things to that are in the way. A
yeah,
lot of times if someone drinks, well, sometimes it's what they're drinking.
that
if
too.
if they're drinking the big high sugar, like a margarita, how much sugar is in a margarita? It's much more than
Yeah.
sodas.
Well,
It's a
I
big
I
cake.
I'm sexist and we're not allowed to talk about this, but that's one of the differences between the ways men and women drink. You don't see women drinking stuff straight nearly as much as you see men. They're going to put it in a cocktail, and those cocktails almost always have a lot of sugar in it. Yeah.
If you can get them on vodka, soda, lime, you've already made an impact on their diet.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's where you get into the details. It's okay, well, I really don't want to do that. I enjoy my nightcap. I enjoy going out with my friends. Okay, then here's how you address the details. Because the simple thing is, here's where these calories come from. Stop it. Okay, well, no. All right, well,
Yeah,
let's figure out the details.
and this is where the approach comes in, because I never demonize anything, right? Alcohol isn't the demon. It's just we're overdoing it.
Hmm.
Or we're doing other things while we do it that are sabotaging us, like the sugar in the drink, or the excess eating when you're out drinking, or before or after, or the next morning, hitting the hair of the dog with a bloody Mary or something along those lines. Those are all the side effects of it. But alcohol isn't the demon. The reason I have to take breaks is because I'm addicted to the damn thing, and I'm very kind of an addictive personality to
Hmm.
begin with. So the break is not for the calories. The break is not for the nutrition aspect of it. The break is to break a habit. And so if drinking is the habit that's getting in their way, best answer right there. And I'm here to support you. You know, you need a support group. Your trainer's here for you. Right.
In the same way that what most people need a trainer for is to get into a good habit, because you have accountability, especially if you've paid money. If you've paid, and this is one of the reasons I I want payment a month in advance. Or so the way I schedule my programs is 4 or 5 times a week is this much, and I want a month in advance. I'll do 3 times a week because that's kind of the minimum to see results. But then I want 2 months in advance because it's going to take a little longer for you to see that I know what I'm doing and you're getting results. And the big reason for that one is you don't want to get stiffed because that happens.
Mm-hmm.
But
It's
also,
happened to me recently.
if you have paid for something, you're going to use it. If you get something for free, it's not valuable. If you have paid to have, you know, an appointment at this time on these days, you're going to go unless you really can't. Like not, I just don't feel like it. No, like I'm I've got the flu. I've had a emergency work or kid or whatever thing. Otherwise, you're going to go. And that's important because you need that accountability to get into a good habit. In the
Mm-hmm.
same way that Sober October, I need to make sure that I can break this bad habit, that it
Mm-hmm.
that it doesn't have a hold of me, that I can still control it.
Well, this is where the accountability comes in because this is the upside to gimmicks like Sober October is you go into it, you know you've committed to a month, but you didn't commit forever. You
Hmm.
didn't make a lifestyle change. Obviously, long-term lifestyle changes are the best, but sometimes you need a Kickstarter. But you're also not making that commitment. But then it also becomes a game. Same with your training. It becomes a
Hmm.
game. You got to hit these 3 times a week, or you lose the game. And
Hmm.
you lose some money because you lost the game because you didn't get the full value of what you did because you paid for 2 months and then you didn't show up for half of it. You lost that money. That was losing the bet. Well, the game Sober October was difficult for me. You know, we're talking 20 years of drinking heavily or at least too much. And, 2 weeks into it, the only thing that got me through it was the fact that one drink is a loss.
I
There
hate to
wasn't,
lose. Yeah.
yeah, I hate to lose. And also, I hate to lose to certain people. And my niece told me I couldn't do it. My 9-year-old niece, first of all, I should assess things if she was already noticing the pattern, but she said, "You're not going to make it." And that was motivation enough. Every time I'd see her that month, I'm still alive. But yeah, just making it a game. And in real life, when you make a lifestyle change and a drink is presented to you, yeah, one won't hurt. But in the game, one's a loss. So you either win, you either lose, or you lie about it. And I hate to lose and I hate to lie about things. So the only option was winning. And it sucked for parts of it. Actually, it was
Hmm.
sucked and then it was easy. And then as it was coming to an end, it got really hard again all of a sudden. I don't know if it was the length of time or just
The
the
anticipation of
anticipation.
thinking
Yeah.
about what do I want to break the fast
Oh,
with,
you saw the first. Y'all saw the first one.
Mhm.
That was my favorite drink, and whew, that one went straight to my head too. But then the tolerance came back like that.
Speaking of accountability,
Well,
I'm old and
accountability is big. What are you going to go into? Because mine's still on the tracking stuff.
calorie tracking, yeah. So
Okay.
I'm old and grumpy and analog, and something that helped me when I started tracking my calories, because the whole point of this is I'm getting into a cut phase. I'm trying to cut fat, cut my body fat down, and so get serious about it, you need to track your calories. I'm actually writing them down on in a notebook because the to me that feels more real than if I was using the MyFitPal or some other app. I use that to look up calories. Um, but it feels more real. And if I'm writing it down in a journal, uh, do I really want to measure out these Cheez-Its and actually write down and have to look at the fact that I ate a bunch of Cheez-Its because I was in a bad mood? No. So it adds a layer of accountability, and that's something that works for me, is it adds that layer of accountability to that tracking. Um and it's also kind of how you've talked before, going back to your being a better trainer, how to find a good trainer versus bad trainer. Do you do the things you make your clients do? Is all right, you're about to have them do this program. Does Have you actually done it yourself?
Mm-hmm. This is an example of FitPal. I just grabbed a random day from October because I tracked all through that month.
Hmm.
Now for me, tracking is kind of a reminder because when I'm tracking, I do measure everything out, and
Hmm.
you get good at eyeballing it, but then you need refreshers every once in a while
Yeah.
because that eyeball gets bigger and bigger and bigger as time goes on. But also I did October because one of the things about not drinking was I realized how much I can actually eat when I'm
Hmm.
not getting those extra drink calories. But for our sponsor that we are going to get at some point, I'm determined, Waco's 000, 1 cup fat-free cottage cheese, 1 cup with a little bit of Nutella in it because I could get away with a lot of calories.
Hmm.
So 49 grams of protein, 500 calories, that's a pretty solid meal. And you're satisfied. But tracking, the great thing about tracking is not only do you get it more right because you have to measure everything and you're seeing it, and you're kind of seeing it in real time if you have an easy app to use. So I would put my breakfast in as I was eating my lunch, and then I would put my lunch in, and then I'm like, wow, I still got 1,500 calories to eat. Or I would be like, well, crap, I front loaded a little too much today. And so you've got that instant feedback. Now, if you're doing it post hoc, then you don't get that instant feedback.
Yeah.
But one of the things, and this is where it segues to what I was talking about earlier when I interrupted myself with my own advertisement, is with research, one of the things that gets in the way of nutrition and exercise research so much is the fallacy of the Hawthorne effect. The Hawthorne effect is your subjects change their behavior because they know they're being studied. You take advantage of the Hawthorne effect when you start tracking. People
Hmm.
automatically start eating better when they start seeing what they're eating because they're tracking themselves. You are the study participant and your behavior automatically changes. People eat on average, I think it's like 25 to 30% less as soon as they start actually tracking their food. So tracking is a great tool. And normally I'm not a micromanager, but it is something I go back to every once in a while just to hit that refresh button. Or if I do have a specific goal, like you said, you're cutting right now.
Hmm.
Well, you want to be on top of that. And yes, I hate doing things in a micromanaging way, but I also hate to lose. So I'm going to do this thing I don't like just to get the result I want. And it's not that bad once you get used to it. I have
Hmm.
everything entered in there that that I need, even recipes. Let's see, because I just sent you that one yesterday.
Yeah, because I asked, hey, how much have you got this figured out? Because your super beans that I think we've mentioned before is I had that and a giant pile of smoked turkey.
Yeah, my
Uh,
super beans. For those that are curious and you want a quick recipe here, if you break it down, if you do a cup of the super beans, because it's a half pinto beans, then a quarter lentils, quarter split peas, and then a bunch of greens, which you really don't have to count those as much. I just put it in there for the micronutrients it tracks.
yep.
But then you put it in an Instapot, and then if you got one of those handheld blenders, into refried
Yeah.
beans basically. And 1 cup is 251 calories with all of this great micronutrient profile. But anything I make relatively often I go ahead and make basically you just take all the ingredients, you measure them all going into the same thing, and then how many times can I cut it up, and that's a serving.
Yep.
So my homemade lasagna comes out to 8 servings. And so these are all the ingredients in a whole. And so when it does 1/8 of that as the serving. So
And that's the nice thing about the MyFitnessPal is you can find recipes on there. So somebody's already done the work for you because I
well,
don't want
and
to do math.
almost everything you can buy in the store or go to any kind of semi-chain restaurant is already also entered.
Hmm.
Typically, like you can
Yeah.
get, when we went to Twin Peaks when you were down here, I just logged on and said Twin Peaks avocado smash burger, and it was already there with regular fries or sweet potato, regular fries. Okay. And I didn't have to enter anything except hit click, and it was there. It's awesome. And it also gives, I mean, if you're not tracking, you're not trying. Some people can do without it, but, and I always give them the option. They say, oh, I can just eat better. Okay, well, let's eat less of this. But a month into it, if they're doing all these things right in the gym, well, now my reputation's on the line, right? So they're doing all these things right in the gym, but they're still a little plumper and poofier than they want to be.
Hmm.
All right, obviously you're not eating right. I've had 300-pound clients look me in the eye and say, I don't eat bad. You don't get 300 pounds by not eating bad. Some people struggle a little bit and
Got a
have
meme for
thyroid
that.
issues, but it's we've got to have a little come to Jesus moment here. You got an example?
Yeah, one of my favorite memes.
Uh-oh. Maybe we'll make this one the cover. Oh,
Okay, honey, look. Again, it's a simple formula. Calories in, calories out. The formula's off. I have had one out of I haven't had nearly as many clients or potential clients as you, but clients and potential clients, I've had a few hundred. One time have I encountered someone who had an actual metabolic problem. And it was actually the inverse of that. It was this teenage kid that he could not gain weight. And it wasn't just hyperthyroidism. It was crap. I forget the name of the condition because again, I've only encountered it once. Um, but he wanted to get stronger, but he couldn't put on mass. And then it's like, well, that's gonna be tricky.
yeah.
Uh,
The hard gainer is a thing. This is the meme I thought you were looking for. Hold on, by the way.
no, I hadn't seen that.
No, this is something that I've had to deal with a lot because of working with athletes.
Uh-huh.
The hard gainer is a thing because they just have less fat cells. They have all, but we don't want them to gain fat. We want them to gain muscle, right?
Hmm.
So we're going to look at their program and see if they're getting the proper. Maybe they handle volume better than somebody else, or something along those lines. But this is where I actually take a client out to eat. I'll take them to
Mm.
dinner, and my appetite when I really want to put something to it. I have won eating championships as a child and young adult.
Especially if it was leg day.
Yeah, even that was even before. That's why I was so fat. Remember?
Yeah.
I 6 plates of chicken fried steak and double mashed potatoes. But we would sit down and I would let them order what they want as I'm watching, and it would always be something I knew was not enough. And basically, when the waitress would get there, I'd just be like, "These nachos, how substantial of a plate is it?" They're like, "Pile." Like we usually give it for a whole table for people to share. I was like, "I'll take that." And I'll get the jokes like, "Oh, you're going to take some home? You don't take nachos home. They're all soggy."
Exactly.
And I just keep going as we're talking and going as we're talking. And the whole plate's gone. They're like, "You ate all of that? That's how you need to eat. You're 190 pounds and 6'3". You want to throw 100 miles an hour? You need about 30 more pounds on your body. You need to eat like that. Maybe not
What?
nachos. That's not optimal, but that little steak and broccoli you had, I need that to be steak and potatoes and
Hmm.
broccoli."
Hmm. Now, and for most of us out there, it's the inverse. It's because we are desk jockeys that need to lose some fat, and you know you're sitting there with a pile of cookies on your chest in bed, thinking that I don't know why I can't lose weight. So,
Well,
so,
another thing about tracking though is the Hawthorne effect is the technical term for it, but it's also just a smack in the face of the things you're already doing.
mhm.
Because I don't know how many times I've trained a couple, and the wife is like, "I only had a glass of wine," and the husband's behind her going, "Whole bottle."
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Wine is especially problematic going back to our alcohol talk because there's more than just the alcohol in there. So what what you mentioned, we didn't go into the technical details there. If you're just having vodka soda lime, all that's in the vodka is the alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
Basically there are trace amounts of whatever else, but the only calories are the alcohol calories. Wine, you have the alcohol calories and you have all that other stuff in there that has
Mm-hmm.
calories in it.
And
So,
I'm not anti-wine. Few glasses of wine can be good for you in some
but
cases. We know the good chemicals in them, but at the same time, they also have sugars. They also have the
mhm.
alcohol, and again, if your alcohol calories are just basically pausing your body's metabolism of the other calories that you're ingesting as well.
And this is why one of the bits of advice I give to people is to track absolutely everything you put in your mouth for at least 3 days. And one of the reasons for that is so that you see, you know, yeah, it's a glass of wine, health benefits, all that, blah blah. You need to look at exactly how many calories and how many carbs are in that glass of wine so that you can translate it to that whole bottle. You need to look and say, well, I just have a little bit of chips with my sandwich. Okay, when you track absolutely everything, you realize how small a serving actually is when it comes to most junk foods. And we don't eat just that small serving size. It's, oh, wow, that little bit of chips is actually 3 servings. And so it's this many calories. So you need to track absolutely everything that goes into your mouth for that reason as well, is if you don't understand the volume that you're eating and what that translates to with calories.
Let's look. Vodka, 97 calories.
Mhm.
Nothing else in it. One shot. Is that a 1 ounce shot? Let's go by fluid ounce. 65 per ounce. So that would be an ounce and a half shot. So 65. So calories per ounce. Where's milliliters? They got milliliters on here. I mean, milligrams would be about the same. They don't have it. Damn it. Okay. Well, how many shots do you have? How many ounces are in? We need a converter. Hold on. Fluid ounce to
Milliliters.
milliliter. Let's go. So 1 ounce is 30 milliliters. So if we make that 750, that's a bottle. So 25 ounces in a bottle. A little over 25 ounces in a bottle. And at what was that, 65 an ounce?
Mm-hmm.
So a bottle of vodka is getting close to 2,000 calories.
All right, so there's my 2000 for the day. I'm done.
but still 65 an ounce. And the average drink's about an ounce and a half. So 97. So close to 100 calories of your drink is already taken up. And that's a standard drink. That's not even a double.
Mm-hmm.
And how many standard drinks do you have, in one sitting or at a party? If you're at a party, how many standard drinks do you have? Probably 4, 5, 6, depending on how long the party is. If
Mm-hmm.
it's my Super Bowl party, then I'm a bottle down easy. But yeah, there's your calories right there. 10 ounces is 650 calories.
So back to my example of keeping it simple, stupid, and trying to figure out the details for yourself. all right, so we understand calories in, calories out. So after you have tracked absolutely everything that goes in your mouth for 3 days, then take an average. It's not a lot of data points, but then
Mm-hmm.
take an average because you don't eat the same thing every day. So take an average and then weigh yourself and then figure out how many calories per pound of body weight you're eating. So there's your baseline. So now just start scaling it back a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. So that and then readjust. So I tell people this a lot. Unless you are, you know, trying to get ready for a fight or something, don't weigh yourself every day. You'll drive
Mm-hmm.
yourself insane because your body weight fluctuates quite a bit simply based on water.
Mm-hmm.
Because a pint's a pound the world around. Water's kind of heavy. So you'll drive yourself insane. Pick a day and weigh yourself at the same time every week on that day. So, for me it's Monday morning when I wake up. So then reassess every week. Okay, am I down any? All right, now you have your new calories per pound of body weight. And if you feel the other reason I do this is because a big problem with dieting is, the binging and rubber banding is you go too hard and then you can't sustain it. Okay, so start at the top and work your way down.
So this was again October when I was tracking. Uh, I must have celebrated there. Well, that's November 3rd. But October when I was tracking, that's 3,000 calories. So everybody's like, "Oh, I need to eat 1,200 calories." Da, 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 da. So I got close to it a couple times, but I was pretty on it, and I lost 10 pounds over that month. So that's almost as good as you can get. 2 pounds a week is 8. So, but yeah, track, find your line, and then check, like you just said, if you're losing or gaining. And if you're right on your line and you're losing, well, guess what? You have a great metabolism. If you're right on your line and you're gaining, you may have a slightly slower metabolism or you're not measuring properly. So,
Yeah. And the other reason I do that, like I said, because it's easier to start at the top and then work your way down. So if it's, oh, I need 1,500 calories a day so I can get, dude, you're 300 pounds. You can't do that. You're going to, you know, you're going to break after a week, maybe two, and then you're going to binge. Don't do that. Okay. Start at the top. It's this many calories per pound is what I'm eating. So now I'm gonna go, just a couple calories down. Check again, couple calories down. Work your way down. Do not, and this is, you know, I don't know how many times you've encountered this is, you know, I had one of the most annoying clients I have ever had is she was a Hooters girl uh on their and she'd made it into, one of their calendars, and that kind of inspired her. She wanted to do fitness model stuff, and I was like, okay, we can work on that. And she was, high metabolism, so she was, really petite, really skinny, and she wanted more curves. I was like, okay, well, that's gonna be hard because let's, look at your calories, and you're the inverse of most of my clients who are desk jockeys, so we're gonna have a little bit of trouble putting on mass. Okay, well, I've got a competition in 3 weeks. It doesn't work that way, honey. I mean, we can get started, but you're not going to see a lot of change in 3 weeks. You
yeah,
need you need to.
you're looking at if you can put on a pound a week of muscle,
Hmm.
that's for a guy. That's still a good number.
Hmm.
Un, Unassisted, we'll say, unassisted pound a week is a good number. That's not that much muscle because distribute that over your entire
Yep.
body. Uh, so and I'm assuming she's smaller than a guy. So if you can put on half a pound of muscle a week with, again, no chemical assistance, even with chemical assistance, 3 weeks is not enough time. You can make a lot of change, but it wouldn't be stage ready change.
Here's the reason she was my most annoying client though is the other thing we had to work around is, all right, well, we need to do a lot of lower body because you're looking at all these Instagram butt models, and and I asked her, all right, well, send me a picture of what you want to try and look like. And so she sent me a picture of an Instagram butt model, and I was like, okay, we might be able to get close, but you have a different physique, you have a different body type. It's not going to be that. And she understood that. She was cool with that. She's just, you know, this is what I'm going for. But the problem was she had trouble doing a lot of lower body exercises because of chronic lumbar pain. I was like, all right, well, we can address that, and let's work on your technique, blah blah blah. After the 3 weeks before her show, her lumbar was still hurting, and it's like, well, I'm not sure
Because you're
what to.
trying to change a tire while it's driving. That's why.
Exactly. No, no, no. This is why. Because she had scoliosis.
Oh, well,
And she
there
didn't
is
bother
that.
to tell me that. It's like, do you remember that health sheet that we did at the beginning and you signed it and said, yes, this is my health conditions, and I'm truthfully relaying to you yeah, there's a reason we do that. Because some of the stuff I had you doing could have and might have and probably made it worse.
Yeah,
So,
I've
yeah.
been down that road, but that's because people come to me because they have scoliosis and they have a
Mm,
problem, but they tell me. Now I have had, well, you should have told me that going into it, but not with that one, because not recently, just because of how I get my clients now. But yeah,
mhm.
if you're fishing for them at a bigger gym, they have to be upfront with you. But the 3 weeks out, what these ladies do in general, men do it too, but it looks different. They sign up for these things before they even start to get ready for them, because the signing up for it was what gives them the motivation to do it. Which, nothing wrong with motivational techniques, but you have to be realistic. And what she needed was time off from the competition
Mhm.
to actually do a full evaluation of why her back hurt. Because if you're in competition mode, again,
Yeah.
any prehab or rehab in competition mode, and this is in any sport, pitchers in their rotator cuff are notorious for this as well. I stole that from Eric Cressy, the changing the tire, because
Mm.
he says working on your rotator cuff in season is like trying to change a tire in a moving car. That was his quote, and it's true. You have to take time off from the thing that is causing the pain to address the pain. That's why my pitchers don't throw even their keys to me between October and December. And then they start their throwing program again. But during October, November, and right into December, we're working on the things underneath the surface they need to work on. The basketball player that I trained this last summer, I kept telling him, quit playing Lifetime League basketball. Quit playing Lifetime League basketball. You have ankle issues. We're addressing your ankle issues, and everything we're doing is going to make them more vulnerable while they're recovering from what we did. What does he do? Cancels his session because he rolled his ankle playing basketball at Lifetime after we trained.
Yeah.
Have to take time off sometimes.
It's the reason there's an off season.
It's
There's
also
a.
it's also a lesson in delayed gratification.
Mhm, mhm.
You can't play yourself into shape, but it feels like it because you're
Yes.
getting instant feedback. Whereas a strength and conditioning program, especially when competition is involved, it takes taking a step back and being in the abstract for a while. And training yourself, this is where it gets hard because you feel the moment. Whereas I can be kind of sociopathic about it. These are the things that are going to make this problem better. And I'm not in that moment. I am just using precision and then measurement tools along the way to
Yeah.
make sure it's going all right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. And we kind of talked about this last time we talked about fitness, is that from the outside looking in, especially if you know what you're doing and you've got a little bit of experience, you can gauge relative exertion and you know, all right, I think I'm done. No, you're not. We can put on a little more weight and you can do another set because your form's not breaking down. You just don't want to keep going. So let's put on a little more weight. Let's do another set. So that's that again, that's back to where we kind of started with accountability is that's the big thing that a personal trainer gives you. That's a big reason why people have workout buddies is because if you don't feel like going and your workout buddy does, then they drag you along to keep you accountable.
Well, and that's one of the goals I'm trying to bring forward in the other channel with helping other trainers is that's an art. That's not a science all
Yeah.
the time. Again, I always equate this to cooking. It's there, you have recipes and you follow them, then you learn how to modify them, and then you learn how to create your own. And the same thing with your interactions with your clients. I can take my client that I had originally planned to do, 200 pounds on bench press that day and spot them for their warm-up sets and be like, you know what, we're going to do 225 today. I can do that because I've earned that.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the concepts, and I think I still have the tab up because I was working on this stuff before we started. But everybody heard the 10,000 hours,
Yeah.
10,000 hour rule. Well, I've got over 30,000 hours, but this is the important part of it. Good teaching matters. I had great mentors, but I also know how the industry was when I got into it. When 24-hour Fitness hired me, they said, don't worry, we'll teach you what you need to know. They have one class where they kind of give you this is how you use the equipment in the gym, the thing you're supposed to take everybody through when they join the gym too. They
Yeah.
teach you how to do that sort of ish, and then 4 classes on selling stuff. And so then they leave you on your own and you're just got to figure it out. But then when I went to Velocity, I had like 5 great coaches that all made it part of their job to help me be a great coach. And that changed everything. Well, most people only get exposed to that first part. So
Mm-hmm.
they either give up or they just start doing random stupid things that they saw on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm trying to do is translate across the screen. These are the things I learned over time. And no, it's not as good as if you were in this garage with me, talking to me about it and me showing you and me manipulating, but it's as close as we can get with the web. That's what I'm going for with
Mm-hmm.
that. And I want to do that with regular people too, because not everybody can afford a trainer. A trainer's a luxury. You know how expensive I am? And I can't go any lower and make a living. So, and I have very little overhead. So now go to a big gym, they've got to really pump those numbers. So it's not something everybody can afford. Most people can't afford $65, $70 an hour to work out, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and
And then, X number of times a week, every week, that
mm-hmm,
that adds up fast. Um, I think I got this from you, but you're the 10,000 hours guy made me think of it is uh a bad rep is a negative result.
mm-hmm.
And
And you almost need 10 good reps to make it up. That's neuro training. Now, I have come across work, and through Andrew Huberman is a big one, that when you're learning a completely new skill, sometimes it is good from a neurological standpoint to just go out and suck at it for a little while, because you have a dopamine reaction to the few reps you get right,
mhm.
and it actually signals your body to rewire in that way because of just the high you get from getting that good rep. That's why I just started randomly throwing darts at the dartboard, because I did at that point I wasn't very good at darts. But then I just started throwing them and throwing them and throwing them. And every time I'd hit that bullseye, I was like, yeah, well, it worked, because I just started hitting the bullseye more and more and more and more and more. So some things, and I think probably as with everything, it needs to be some of both. There are times in your training where you nitpick, and then there are times in your training when you just do it. And that's what I started doing with my athletes a lot. And I think it's working really well. But yeah, again, that's where the art is. This is where we don't have the greatest research. Neurologically, it pays off to suck. But we know from motor training over just hundred years of experience in this that perfect practice makes perfect. So where's the blend of those two things? How do I take
Yeah.
advantage of the physiology?
And I think that's a good place to wrap it up. That uh, don't get hung up, and a lot of people do. It's not quantity versus quality. It's both. You need quality quantity.
Mm-hmm.
So and that applies to whether you're trying to make your brain better by reading, learning a new language, doing a whatever. If you're just I, this is I meant to bring this up, and this is a good place to bring it up. Is so if you watched the whole video that I showed last time, the the bro science squat video. So before he starts joking about active warm up and he doesn't know what it is, it's the bisexual warm
Yeah.
up. It's so right before that, he's doing a bit where he's talking about just do some wild leg swings. And and again, this is why he's funny, but also sometimes a little confusing, is how many layers of irony are there here is I think what he was saying with the active dynamic warm up is, are you just moving or are you moving with a plan and a purpose?
Mm-hmm.
So you want that quantity, but it needs to be quality work. Do you to your point about a good personal trainer can tell you why? Can you tell yourself why?
Uh, yeah, exactly. The biggest question is always why, or what are we trying to accomplish? Why and what?
Mm-hmm.
The how you can leave to them. If they can answer those two questions, then you can give them the how. That's why they're the
And
professional.
and if you're trying to
And
figure it out yourself, you're going to be able to figure out the how better if once you can answer those questions.
mm-hmm,
Because then you know what you're looking for. You'll know if you're just trying to, you know, if you're just googling how do I make my butt bigger, and you're looking at all these Instagram butt models and what they do, are you actually doing quality work? Well, maybe on accident.
mm-hmm.
Probably not though.
Well,
Again, this is why we
especially
like
when
Brett Contreras.
we talk about survivor bias, but there's also a beginner bias. So you come across that stuff, and a lot of these people that are on Instagram this is how they start out, is when you're a beginner at something, you almost can't help but get results. And so if you are a beginner and you look up Brazilian butt model X, and she's doing all these, kickbacks and fire hydrants and all of these butt exercises with her bands around her knees, and you do it, you're going to get results because you're new at it. You just gave your body a stress that it's never had before.
Mm-hmm.
But you also would have got that same result from a Contreras type program where you're doing weighted hip bridges, and his I don't know how his squat program looks, but I know his strong curves program is pretty well rounded. But if you do that same program, you get a similar result in the beginning, but then you get long-term results because you're building a base, and that's the difference. So the instant feedback for a beginner throws everything off kind of cognitively. Everything works for 4 to 6 weeks. That's quoting my old mentor Gene Coleman. Everybody's a good trainer for 4 to 6 weeks. It's, can you develop something that's you can continue on to eternity? And it depends on the client. I actually, if I know I'm going to have somebody temporarily, I spend a portion of our session teaching them how to train themselves. And I've gotten the comment before, which is one of the things that sparked my ideas for what I'm trying to do online, is the comment was, all my clients would be better trainers than most trainers. And that's because there's that board in the corner over there. And half the time we're just talking about shit, and I start doing a lecture on the board while they're lifting. And it reinforces what they're doing, so they're more into it. So psychologically, they're getting a better workout. But also, if for some reason they move or something, they've got all this knowledge. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe they try to find somebody like me. Well, they've got all this knowledge to take into that process, or they just decide, you know what, I could probably do this on my own, and they might be able to. So that's the goal there. But as far as the movement pattern stuff, you can do it with lifting, because say take a power clean. I will spend the education portion of the lift nitpicking every little thing. And then for the last set or two, I'll throw on a couple extra pounds and just see how they do. Did they lose everything we talked about? Or did they do it better than they did the last time? And so that's where I'm kind of finding the blend of the perfect practice versus sometimes struggling through the process. But yeah, I think that's a good place to stop though. You've got a hard out anyways, and we've
Mm-hmm.
gone for long enough.
All right. Well, we will see y'all next time. Tomorrow is Wednesday church service. Are we moving on to the flood, or do you have more general kind of stuff to talk about?
I'm good with the flood.
All right. And
Is the
then we will
flood
talk
before
about that
Moses?
tomorrow.
Flood is before Moses.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
All right. We'll see y'all then.
Standard disclaimers, no medical advice. We did talk about nutrition, but we are not nutritionists and we are not your trainers. So anything we said is for educational purposes only. I actually have a screen now I can pop up that has the disclaimer on it because because I'm going to have that like right before, since I am like unofficially officially giving advice on the other channel. So I might just keep that posted up so we can use that every time.
All right.
Later.
Later.